Hi guys, welcome to the session. I'll be starting off the critical appreciation of a poem. Sorry to keep you waiting for so long. Well, let's start the class, shall we? So first, let's get on with the first slideshow. Now, a lot of you might be having problems and wondering, if I have a poem in front of me, how do I go about analyzing a poem? How do I critically appreciate a poem? Is that what's bothering you? Well, don't worry, help is at hand. Let's crack it, and I shall help you do that right away. So keep your notebooks ready, keep your pens ready, and let's get started. Alright? So let us see what is a critical appreciation of a poem. A detailed literary analysis of a poem is known as explicating a poem. So in other words, we can say critical appreciation is like a detailed literary analysis. Can you do that? Of course you can, because you need to have a checklist in place. I'm sure you can do that. So let's see whether we have a checklist and whether we can get this going. I can assure you that our checklist will be very helpful in getting you to critically appreciate a poem beautifully, so that your score is top notch. Because it's not just enough to just get through the exam. You should do very, very well. Alright? So remember, you do not necessarily have to follow this order, which the checklist that I give you, or use all the elements discussed. If it is a question based, focus on the relevant part and then you can start working. But let me first get hold of my pen so that I can, or a highlighter maybe. No, let me use a pen. That will be better. Yeah. So let's see. So what did we talk about? We learned that if you have a detailed literary analysis of a poem, it is known as a critical appreciation. And if it is something which is a specific question, then what you need to do, don't write the entire stuff. Focus on the part which is relevant for you and then answer the question. Okay? Number 1, literal sense. What is the meaning of this word literal sense? It is being able to restate the poem in prose form. So when you read a poem, read it thoroughly. And then you tell yourself, okay, so this is the poem. How can I put this in prose? How can I put this in regular words? And that is, from verse, what do you have to do? You have to convert it into a prose form. For that, the first thing is to read the poem thoroughly. And after that, you paraphrase the poem. Have you ever heard of the word called paraphrase? If you haven't, write this: P-A-R-A-P-H-R-A-S-E. Paraphrase the poem. Simplify it in easy to understand words. Those of you who joined in for my class, a very warm welcome. I'm glad to see you. And I know that you are looking forward to this as much as I was to training you. Now, after literal sense, which is the overall picture, what is it about, we get an idea and we are putting it in prose form. The next thing you need to look at is something called diction. What on earth is diction? Diction is the choice of words used by the poet. What kind of words does the poet use? Those of you who've come in late, please remember your teacher, and my name is Anita. Anita Acharya has told you to please keep a notebook ready. Okay? So please keep your notebook ready and keep your pen or pencil ready and take down your notes. Some of you must be thinking, hey, school is closed. What are we doing here? School is closed. That is, the school building is closed, but schooling is going on here. And your teacher is working very hard to make sure you do well. So please put pen to paper and let's start. Alright? So let's see. Diction refers to the choice of words used by the poet. What do you mean by choice of words? Is the language formal? So we will have to see whether the language is formal or whether the language is informal. You really have to look at that. If the language is formal, then you would have to mention that in your analysis. And if it's like a very conversational, very chatty way of speaking, you need to say that the diction used by the poet is informal. Is it abstract or grounded in reality? This means Is the language abstract? Is the language abstract? Or that is mysterious? It sounds, it's something which doesn't seem very typical. So is it abstract, or is it something which you can relate to in everyday life? Is it something which you can relate to in daily life, or is it something which is little philosophical? If you have understood that, you can mention this as well and you get your extra points there. The next point. Is it vivid? Is the language vivid or mysterious? What do I mean by vivid? V-I-V-I-D. If you didn't know the meaning of the word, remember vivid means lifelike. Okay? Vivid means lifelike. So is it vivid or mysterious? Vivid means something which is lifelike or something which seems real. Okay? It seems as if it's absolutely real. Okay, so I have putting this on mute, but I can hear whatever you have to say, and I'm looking forward to seeing you. So Raktim, I welcome you to the class. Jai Hind, glad to hear that. Alright, and then we see archaic words. Are the words archaic? Archaic means outdated. Archaic is outdated. Are the words archaic? Or are they colloquial? Look at the spelling of archaic. A-R-C-H-A-I-C. Archaic. Okay, archaic is something which is outdated, which you don't use in today's world. For example, if you have a word like doth, D-O-T-H, doth means do. That's archaic. And colloquial words are the words you use in everyday life with your friends. Okay? Raktim, are my words clear to you? Can you hear me clearly? Can you hear me? Is my voice clear? Let me know on the message box. And then we come to sentence syntax. What is sentence syntax? Sentence syntax refers to the word order. For example, if a poet says, a rose is a beautiful flower, he says, beautiful is the rose. Now he's changed the words a bit. He's put the adjective in the beginning and he's put the noun at the end and said, beautiful is the rose. Whereas we say, it is a beautiful rose. That's if we are speaking. But hey, we are not poets, are we? So over here, we're talking about sentence syntax and the way a poet might change the order to make it seem more poetic and more beautiful. Now, are there any positive or negative connotations of the word? What do you mean by connotations? Connotations means, does it give a feel of something positive or negative? Let me give an example of this. If I say I am excited about my results, or I am excited about my upcoming exams, that means it's positive. But if I say I am worried about my exams, then I am being rather negative. Okay? These words help us to convey some emotion. Welcome to the class. And now we come to tone. What is tone? Tone is the attitude of the poet. What is that tone? What does the poet feel about something? What does the poet feel about that particular subject? What is his attitude towards it? What kinds of mood or emotions are conveyed by the poet? Are you aware of that? Do you sense that? If you can understand the emotional feel, if you understand the mood, maybe he's being sentimental. Maybe he's being optimistic. Maybe he's being thoughtful. Even if you can mention those parts, you get your extra points right there. See how easy that is? Then, is there any, let me see, ironical note? What is irony? And in case you're wondering what irony is, I've written it over here. Irony refers to the gap between what is stated in the lines of the poem and what is actually meant. What do you wish to convey and what is actually stated? Right? That, if there's a gap in that, it's called irony. Now, what's the meaning of this? In case you tell somebody that, oh, You missed my birthday. Great friend you are. Wonderful you are. Of course, you don't mean that, do you? You're not really feeling that he's a great or wonderful friend at the moment, because come on, he missed your birthday. So that was an ironical note, which means to say, how could you do that to me? How could you forget my birthday? So by saying that by meaning something opposite to what you said, you are being ironical. Now you understand? You still want some more example of irony? Okay, let's say you haven't met your friend for a long time, and then you call him up and he said, hello, who's speaking? And he said, oh, you become a great and special person, a VIP. So you can't recognize my voice anymore. So does it really mean he's become great and person or a VIP? No. It means, how could you forget my voice? I'm your best friend. I'm your closest friend. That's again an example of irony. I'm just making simple examples for you to understand that irony means when the poet is saying something but meaning something different. That gap is called irony. So if you see that, you must mention it. Alright? And now we come to the next point, that is rhetorical situation. What do you mean by rhetorical situation? It means who is speaking to whom. In a poem, you might find that the poet perhaps has somebody he's speaking to. Rakim, are you able to understand? Rakim? Right. Who is speaking to whom? So over here, who is it the narrator speaking? Who is it? And to whom is he speaking? Okay. And to whom is he speaking? Over here, when you say whom he is speaking, we are referring to the audience or the person who's listening in. Who's listening to him or her? What is the occasion? What is the occasion? Is there any specific occasion on which this poem was written? Was it somebody's birthday? Or was it a big occasion? Maybe an inauguration of something and someone is speaking on it? Was it a speech that was presented on a special occasion? You could mention that. Also, what is the purpose of the poem? Very often, my dear students, when you are explaining about a poem, you all forget that every poet wishes to convey a message, and that message is the purpose of the poem. Why has he written the poem? So if you know that, for example, if there is a poet who writes about the beauty of nature, okay, for example, let's say William Wordsworth's Daffodils, and he writes all about the beauty of daffodils, right? Let me see if I can quote some lines. I wander lonely as a cloud that floats high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Amazing, isn't it? It makes you feel as if you can see the sunflowers right in front of you. So that is the purpose of the poem, to make you feel that nature is beautiful. And nature has a deep connect with us, and we can relate to it even in happy times or in sad times. Nature can provide strength and support to us. See, I even quoted a poem for you. So make sure you work very hard. Your teacher's working very hard. You work hard too, okay? Alright. And then, what is the narrator's relationship to you, the reader? Is he speaking to you directly by saying, and you should do this and you should do that? Or is he speaking to somebody else and you're just kind of, overhearing? So you need to know, are you being spoken to directly? Or is he just speaking to somebody else and he's not even thinking about you as a reader? Or are you kind of listening in to what the speaker is saying? You can feel that when you read a particular poem. Let's take the example from a course study. Let us say in grade 11 you read a photograph, right? Yes. So in a photograph, what happened? The poet was being sentimental, and she saw her mother's picture along with two sisters, many years back. So what's happening out here? She is speaking to you, the reader, and she's also reflecting on days when her mother was alive, the mother's laughter, the mother's memory, so on and so forth. So we are able to understand what the reader is saying. Some parts of it are very private and we seem to be overhearing what the speaker is saying, and some parts she's speaking to directly. And there are some parts where we are being ignored, where the mother is looking at the daughter and saying, hey, look at this picture, look at this photograph. So it's a very intimate conversation, a small conversation between the mother and the daughter. So we the readers are not in the picture, we can just listen in. Alright? Interesting, right? Now I'm sure you read the poem once more to understand what's going on with that poem. Alright. And now we come to the figurative language. Now figurative language sounds such a mouthful. But guys, please don't worry about this. Those of you who have challenges in remembering what is figurative language, I shall teach you by and by. And as you go along, I'll also be talking to you about various sites that you can reach out to, and you would find it pretty useful. So this deals with words and phrases that go beyond the literal meaning within a text. So sometimes when you hear the word figurative language and try to wonder what does this mean, just remember they are words and phrases that go beyond the literal meaning. For example, if you say, she smiled like a contented cat who had just drunk a saucer of milk. So over here, it doesn't really mean you're talking about cats and a saucer of milk. It just means she looks like that. Her smile was like that. She seemed so contented that she reminded that person of that. And what we used over here was something called a simile. Simile uses as or like for description or comparison. So I have listed out for you 6 common figurative language forms. Now guys, don't think these are the only language forms that will come in every single poem. I didn't say that, okay? You've got to learn a lot more, and I'm going to help you with that as you go along, as I promised you in this journey. But as of now, there are 6 common figurative language forms you can definitely learn. One is simile, where you use as or like for description and comparison. And then you have metaphor. What is metaphor? Metaphor is very similar to simile. It also refers to a symbolic substitution of any concept, but we don't use as or like for it. For example, there was a beautiful play of Shakespeare called Romeo and Juliet. I'm sure you've heard of that, right? Alright. So in that, you had Romeo saying, Juliet is the sun. This doesn't mean that Juliet suddenly transformed into the sun. It means Juliet was as bright and a source of energy like the sun. He did not say Juliet is like the sun. If he had said Juliet is like the sun, what would it have been? Tell me. Simile. There's no like, there's no as, and what will it be? Metaphor. Now you won't forget, okay? Alright. Then we look at the next one. And the next one is called metonymy. Okay? Let's see what is metonymy. Metonymy is one word which means a larger concept. For example, if I say, let me use an example here. If I say golden round, what can this refer to? This is a metonymy of crown. When I use the word golden round is the metonymy for crown. Alright? You'll remember? So one word which means a larger concept. Personification. This one, a very easy way to remember is think of the word person. A person has got human qualities. So personification. So it shouldn't be so difficult to understand. Personification is when you give human qualities to inanimate or abstract objects. Okay? Then we call that personification. Let's see. Suppose I say the wind sighed. Okay? The wind sighed. Right? So here, can a wind actually sigh? Sigh is like a breath, right? You're breathing in deeply, sighed. That's something which humans do. But when you say the wind sighed, you're giving it a human-like quality. So this is an example of personification. If I say, the sky, this you might have heard very often, the sky rained tears. Can a sky rain tears? Actually, tears are like something which we have, those drops of water, salty water, when you cry and you feel miserable and you have your tears. But the sky rained tears means it was raining perhaps, but it seems as if the sky was raining tears, and it gives a personification to the sky itself. Right? Now we come to another aspect called irony. I've already mentioned to you what irony is, so I'm not going to go too much into it. Using words that are different in meaning to what is stated. This you should be able to explain properly. And the sixth one is hyperbole. What is this word? Have you ever heard of this word hyperbole? An easy way to remember the word hyperbole is to know the word hyper. Hyper means to be like, overexcited. So hyperbole is something which means an over-exaggeration of facts or concepts. We call this hyperbole. So what are the 6 common figurative language forms? Tell me. Simile, where you use as or like. Metaphor, where you have a symbolic concept but don't use as or like. Metonymy, where one word means a large concept like the golden round becoming a crown. Personification, giving human-like qualities. Irony, where you use different words which are different in meaning to what is being stated. And hyperbole is an over-exaggeration of facts or concepts. See, there you are, all set to go. Great? Happy? If you are enjoying this lesson, or if you're seeing this later as a recording, please note that you can use code Anita and get a 10% discount. Anita, that's the name of your trainer here. Yes. And you can crack the CBSE test. Do amazingly well. And I would be honored to train you and be a mentor on your journey to hitting a high score in your exam. So here's to success, and let's get cracking. I couldn't resist that. Let's get cracking. I love that. Let's crack it. Yeah. Now we'll look at imagery. As a reader, what do you visualize, hear, touch, taste, or smell in your imagination, transported by the words in a poem? Suppose you had a line like, the velvet touch of the rose. You can literally touch, it feels as if you can literally touch the rose, right? If you can say, the gentle aroma of the jasmine. Ah, nice, right? So you can visualize, hear, touch, taste. Like if you say the window panes were wet or something like that, so you can literally feel as if your fingers are clammy or your fingers are wet because with the touch of the rain, right? So you can have imagery where you visualize, hear, touch, taste or smell thanks to the words used by a poet in his poem. And why does a poet do that? Because he wants you to get into another world, the world of a poem, the world of poetry, and he wants you to be there in that world for some time. Please note that every poem on this planet has imagery, every single poem. So if you say, hey, this poem has imagery, you're right there, you're right, because it would have imagery in any case. But yes, I would advise you to go a little deeper and tell where the imagery is rather than just saying this poem has imagery. Yes? Symbolism. Does the poem use symbolism? Oh, Kanishka, you joined in. Hi, how are you, my dear? Welcome to the class. I hope you haven't missed too much and you can see the recording later on. Okay, Kanishka? And do tell your friends about these classes. Now let's come to symbolism. Does the poem use symbolism? Yes, poems use symbolism. Sometimes. For example, you might say that there are some poems which associate only with darkness. It was dark, it was this, it was that. Or with light, the candle burning, the glow of the sun. So what does it show? What does it symbolize? Does it just mean what it is? The candle, the sun? No. It perhaps the candle and the sun burning, the candle burning and the sun's rays could mean light, energy, life. If you have darkness, stillness, it could perhaps mean something which is not formed, something which is perhaps even evil, because night and evil somehow we take put together. Something which is not clear, you say darkness, or something just before light. Being a very positive person, I'll obviously say that the darkest hour is just before the dawn, right? So the poet will sometimes use certain symbols to represent ideas or qualities. Sometimes he might say tree, the tree of life, or something like that. So here the tree could refer to life itself. Yes, it depends on what it means, because a tree is a source of, it has leaves, it provides shade, it can provide fruit or flowers. So tree is a source of light. It is also a nurturer. It helps to nurture life. It's a nurturer. Is my voice clear to you, Kanishka? Now let's look at sound effects. Is there any rhyming structure, or is it a free verse? Let's look at the sound effects. Sometimes some poems would have a rhyming effect, and sometimes a poem has no rhyming effect. It's a free verse. So we need to see whether there is a rhyming structure or it is a blank verse or a free verse. Yeah, a free verse means, I will underline that part, a free verse means it has got no formal rhyming structure. If your notebook is in hand, please write it down. Are there any repetitions of words or refrains? If you have read a beautiful poem that I remember where you have a repetition of words or refrains, I would put an example here, is of Maya Angelou. You can try reading this online. And the title of the poem is called Phenomenally. So over here, you'll find that there are certain words, certain lines that are repeated over and over again, showing the strength of a woman and showing the power that a woman has. Okay? So there might be all kinds of people in the world trying to put women down, but women are powerful. Women are strong. So that's the basic message which Maya Angelou, a black American poet, wishes to convey through the poem Phenomenally. If you haven't read this, please go through it and let me know what you felt about it. Alright, now we come to alliteration. Is there any alliteration? Remember, we're talking about sound effects. So we're going to talk about repetition of words, we're going to talk about the rhyming structure, and we also need to talk about alliteration. Okay? So over here, if you look at alliteration, those are words which have a repeated sound. For example, if we use a word like, let me write it over here. The sun smiled brightly waking up the sleepy town. So over here we find this sound comes in very often, the s sound. Similarly, if we have some other kind of sound, not the alphabet mind you, the sound which comes up, we call it alliteration. Alright. Next we come to this word. Have you heard of this word? Onomatopoeia. And that's how it sounds. Onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia refers to sound effects. What are examples of onomatopoeia? Let me put them over here for you. Rustling of leaves. One second. Rustling of leaves. When I tell rustling of leaves, I can literally hear the sound of the leaves crackling. When the breeze passes through it, we can say rustling of leaves. if I say whooshing of the wind. These are sound effects. If you have a prose also, it's not necessarily only that in poetry you have onomatopoeia. You can also have this in prose. For example, if you have lines like the car's tires screeched. So over here, when I talk about the word screeched, the car's tires screeched. So tires, I'll mention over here, car's tires screeched. So over here, the word screeched gives the impression of a very harsh sound, and it is also, it's called onomatopoeia because it is providing a certain sound effect. Does the poem sound harmonious, euphony, or harsh, cacophony? Those of you who are seriously listening in, do continue to do that and pay attention to this, okay? And others who are not interested, that's fine. But those of you who want to do well in the exams, please be with me. Thank you for all those of you who are standing up for me. This is for grade 12 and grade 11 students of CBSE, largely. And now we come to theme. What is the central theme of the poem? Whenever we talk about a poem, we need to know what is the central theme of the poem. Those of you who've joined in late would not know that I had told you that what I'm trying to teach you is a critical appreciation of the poem, and I'm bringing up different aspects. So when you read a poem or an unseen passage, you will be able to understand and appreciate the poem by looking at these elements. You may not have to use all the elements. Whatever is required, you use it. Okay, this was based on my research which I'm sharing with you. What is the central theme of the poem means what is the main idea of the poem? In grade 12, you have a chapter which deals with the Yiddish culture, Y-I-D-D-I-S-H culture. It is about the marriage at Brownville. So what was the central theme of the poem? The central theme of the poem was paralysis. If one continues in the same state, same situation, you're becoming numb, emotionless, and it would lead to paralysis of the mind, paralysis of choices. You would not be able to do anything further. The very fact that the heroine wished to move away and was working towards a plan and planning to go to Buenos Aires showed that she was trying to get away from this. But at the end, Frank boards the ship alone and she stays back. This shows that she is still caught in the old Irish world with her sentimental values, and she cannot get out of it. Are you noticing one thing? Though we are also dealing with poetry, we can also deal with prose using some of these techniques. Apart from the main theme, you might also have certain other underlying themes that may come in. Like, for example, the filial relationship, that is the relationship of a child towards the parents. Or you might also have other themes like bonding, promises, trust. So many other themes are there which could be undercurrents also apart from the main theme. Well, for those of you who came in late, I would like to quickly go through this right from the beginning so that you make the most of it. So I started like this with a critical appreciation of a poem, and then we have a detailed literary analysis of a poem which is known as explicating a poem. And then I said if it is question based, you focus on the relevant part. Notice I've underlined that part. And then the literal sense. What is the meaning of literal sense? It is to be able to restate the poem in prose form. You can add that line wherever you want and you can develop it. Read the poem thoroughly, paraphrase the poem. Diction referred to the choice of words used by the poet. The reason I am going back through this is because I noticed that a large part of my students came in late, which is why I thought I'd go back and teach and give a quick recap. So diction refers to the choice of words used by the poet. Is the language formal or informal? Is it abstract or grounded in reality? Is it vivid or mysterious? Vivid means lifelike, okay? Or mysterious. Are archaic words used? By archaic words, I meant outdated words. Or colloquial words used. Colloquial words used means slangs or casual words. What about sentence syntax? That is the word order. Is the word order being changed? I give an example. I said the quality of the rose. I say it's a beautiful rose. Beautiful is the rose. That is what I was talking about. And are there any positive or negative connotations of the language? What I will do is I will hold on this page for some time while you open your notebook and write it down. It will be very important for you to get this. Write it down please in your notebooks. I shall wait till you finish it off. I'll give yourself a minute or two to write it down before I take it to the next slide. The previous slide was literal meaning, which is the general meaning of the poem. All right. Notice I've given you word opposites over here. I've put formal or informal. Abstract or is it concrete, the language? Vivid, lifelike or mysterious? Outdated words or colloquial words? And what about the sentence or the word order? Are there any positive or negative connotations of the language? When I said connotations, what did I mean? By connotations, what did I mean? By connotation, I meant whether this is used, what kind of meaning is conveyed. What kind of meaning is conveyed beyond the natural, normal meaning. So if I say, I am thrilled about something, it's positive. But if I say, I am anxious or I'm worried, it's a negative connotation of the language. Please write it down. This will help you a lot in unseen passages. It will help you a lot in any short answer questions or long answer questions. And this particular chapter is going to be very, very helpful in understanding any kind of poem or any kind of prose. And those of you who have not had a chance to see it, please see the recording. Maybe you will appreciate it. Right? Then I talked about the tone of the poem, which is the attitude of the poem. What is the attitude of the poem? What does he feel about this poem? What is his attitude towards the subject? What is the kind of mood or the emotion that is conveyed by the poet? I told you sometimes that a poet may have a sentimental or reflective mood, or maybe he has very strong emotions of anger or despair which he wants to convey. Those things can also be written down by you, the test taker, and give a good impression that you have understood what the poem is all about. Next was the ironical note in the poem. Irony refers to the gap between what is stated in the lines of the poem and what is actually meant. Anybody who's writing it down? Write it down neatly. So in case you have a question which says what is the tone of the poem, you don't have to write everything else. Just write this much. Attitude, mood, emotions, ironical note. If there is any, you can mention that. If there are any words which provide a connotation which allows you to know the mood, you can mention that as well. Done? If you look at a chapter, let's take Gabriel Garcia's chapter 12 for grade 12 people. Do you remember what I'm talking about? Your first chapter. In that chapter, that is in your kaleidoscope, chapter 1. What is Gabriel Garcia's attitude? What sort of mood or emotions are conveyed? I'm sure you can use this very effectively. Right? Now we come to rhetorical situation. In rhetorical situation, we need to see who is speaking to whom. What is the occasion? What is the purpose of the poem? What is the narrator's relationship to you, the reader? Are you being spoken to directly? Are you being ignored? Are you overhearing what the speaker is saying? First, write it down. You can take any poem and see for yourself if you can apply this and see whether the narrator is speaking to the audience. The example I gave you was a photograph. You can get other examples also. I gave another example of the daffodils by William Wordsworth. Even the Solitary Reaper is a good example. The poet sees a Highland lass standing and singing, in a field, and he's observing her. So he is speaking in a way to the audience, looking at this person. Yes. So there is no occasion. It's just that he had taken a walk along the countryside and he sees this beautiful picture. Who is speaking to whom? What is the occasion? What is the purpose of the poem? Maybe the purpose of the poem in the Solitary Reaper is that the poet wishes to say that there is beauty in the countryside. There is an innocence and simplicity in the girl who is representative of the villages. And it also seems to show perhaps a distance between urban and rural life, perhaps. Could be. See, it's up to you. When a poet writes a poem, it becomes the property of everybody who reads it. So you decide what you make of the poem. What is the purpose of the poem? What is the narrator's relationship to you, the reader? Does he speak to you directly? There was a poem called If by Rudyard Kipling, where a father is speaking to his son. I'll write it down for you. Try reading this, If by Rudyard Kipling. So here you have a father and son speaking, and he says, you should do this, you should do that. The father is telling the son, he is guiding the son on how he should behave in life, the kind of values he should have, the kind of principles he should have. But somewhere deep down, we feel that it's meant for us. It's meant for us because those are values that will be helpful for us as well. So in a way, he doesn't speak to us directly. We are being ignored. He speaks, we are overhearing what the father is speaking to the son. This is that part I talked to you about, overhearing. So my dear students, I do care about the fact that you should get a good score. I am concerned and I'm working very hard to ensure that you do well in the exams. But you need to be sincere and you need to work hard. Nothing comes easy, okay? So promise me that we'll be a great team. You work hard and I'll work hard, and we will make sure that we provide the best kind of results and make sure that you make your family proud and you make all your dreams come true. Okay? Now we'll come to figurative language. So when I talk to you about figurative language, if you had not seen this earlier, please note that I talked about figurative language means the literary devices used, the poetic devices used by the writer to make a poem or to make a write-up, a prose piece more effective, more interesting. Okay? And the common figurative language forms are simile, metaphor, metonymy, personification, irony, and hyperbole. First write it down, then I'll explain it to you. Okay? Have you written it down? Very often I get a question, ma'am, I get very confused between simile and metaphor. What's the difference? Very simple. Whenever you have as or like to compare two things, it's a simile. If it doesn't have as or like and it's comparing two things, it's a metaphor. Easy. So if I say, he smiled like a peaceful saint. Is it a simile or a metaphor? Simile, right? Because I said like. But if I say, my friend was a peaceful saint. Now, when did your friend become a peaceful saint? That must be a metaphor, which is like, it seems as if the friend is like a saint, a peaceful saint. So that's a symbolic substitution without any like or any as. Right? Clear? And then metonymy. I had given an example here where I said that one word means a larger concept. So when I say golden round, it means the crown, which refers to the royalty, kingship. If you can think of any other words, you can add it to your list, and I would like you to think. So if you're thinking that your teacher will do all the talking, I'll just write, you're highly mistaken. Just wait till you join my classes. There'll be lots of work for you to do as well. Right? And we are going to enjoy our classes. So I'll tell you how I teach you. Okay? I really enjoy literature and I really enjoy language. It's my passion. So I'm going to teach you from my heart. But I'll also teach you as per your syllabus. That's a deadly combination, if you just in case you have forgotten. And I want you to enjoy your classes and to work on yourself and develop yourself. In case you say, well, I was weak in English and I'll always be weak. There's nothing like always. You can always improve. Always. Yeah, see, I'm using the word always. So you can improve and you should improve. In case you feel that when I'm speaking to you, I'm not able to understand, I wish my teacher would use Hindi words or some other words. No, I'll not do that for you. Why? Because I don't want to spoon feed you. I want you to hear this once, twice, thrice, 4, 5 times also. But you must hear English. If I speak other languages, and I do speak 6 languages, but if I speak those languages, I'll be diluting the subject called English. Which is why, my dear students, please listen to this and hear it again and again and write down notes. Work sincerely. There is no shortcut to success. Please work. Now I sound like a typical teacher, right? So you're saying you missed school, haha, and here I am. Alright. So then we come to personification. What is personification? As the name suggests, person. So you're giving human qualities to inanimate or abstract objects. And I've given some examples here. Yeah, I noticed that. The wind sighed. The sky rained tears. So sighing and tears, they are all human qualities, right? Or even, if I say the breeze knocked on the windows, or the wind knocked on the windows. Now, how can the wind knock on a window? The wind can perhaps rattle a window, but not knock on it like a human being. But over here, that becomes a personification. Irony, when you use words different in meaning to what is stated. Other words for irony is like sarcasm also, I can say that. But when we use it in a poetic term, we say the poet uses irony. Hyperbole. Hyper means over. Over exaggeration of facts or concepts. Let me give an example of this. I have a very funny example that I have in mind and I'm dying to share it with you. If you say, oh, I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. I'm so hungry this really doesn't mean that you can actually go eat a horse and horses have to look out because they'll become an extinct species. It just means you are so very hungry, and this is an exaggeration of the fact that you are hungry. Okay, so those of you who have been watching these classes and who feel that they can get something out of it, use code Anita and get a 10% discount. I will help you to crack the CBSE test. I commit myself to you that I will help you to do well in your grade 11 and grade 12 exams. Make sure that you do well. I'll be handling language and literature, and I want to make sure that you don't just pass the exam but you do very well. So if you feel you would like to be there, join my classes. I'll be very happy to be a mentor, and let's be successful. Imagery. When you talk about imagery, what exactly do you mean? Sometimes students always feel imagery, ma'am, isn't it always do with seeing something? No. Imagery doesn't always mean to see. Now over here, I've written over here, what do you visualize, hear, touch, taste or smell in your imagination transported by the words in a poem, right? That's what I've said. Now let's see. When we say visualize, I'll write it over here, okay? When I say visualize, it is known as visual imagery. Okay? When I say hear, it is auditory. Auditory imagery. When I say taste, taste deals with, if you know it, you write it down. But this you might forget, so I'm just writing it down for you. Gustatory. Gustatory imagery. If you don't remember these words, it's fine. You can just say there's imagery of taste. There's imagery of, you can put it that way also. But I would like to give you the technical terms. Touch. Touch is known as tactile imagery. What about smell? Smell is to do with olfactory imagery. And I've written this for you. Please note that every poem on this planet has imagery. Symbolism. Does the poem use symbolism? Yes. Sometimes the poet may use certain symbols to represent ideas or qualities. For example, you say tree. If there's a recurring symbol of a tree, maybe a tree can mean life or nurturer or something. See, for Shakespeare, for example, because I'm a big fan of William Shakespeare's works. Alright? So Shakespeare loves to use words like, or loves to use the imagery of birds. So birds can mean many things. Like you can have gentle birds like doves and sparrows. There are other birds which he also mentions like martinet and all, which are all very peaceful birds. And then there are some birds which are predatory, like eagles or owl. So it shows a predatory atmosphere, something which is dark and brooding. Yes, even hawk. So over here, this symbol of dove and sparrow, for example, might be a symbol of peace and goodwill. And if we're talking in terms of eagle, owl, and hawk, perhaps it's a symbol of the dark forces. Or it could be predatory. And out of these two words, the words eagle and hawk, for example, these two birds are also known to be majestic. Not the owl so much, but eagle and the hawk. Interesting? I want you to not just write the exam and do well, but to have a love for English language and literature all throughout. Of course, it's wonderful to appreciate our own native language. It's wonderful to appreciate the fact that we are Indians, and we should never forget that. But when you're studying for something, you study and do as well as you can. Sound effects. I've talked about sound effect. This sound effects part. The first one, we're talking about rhyming structure of free verse. That works for poetry, not for prose, obviously. So you can check out the rhyming structure. You can also see if it has no rhyming structure. You can say, hey, this is a free verse. It's a free verse, which means there is no formal rhyming structure. So you get points when you add these kind of words.